Smashamaniacs.
GeoGearHeads.
Welcome to the 253rd episode of the GeoGearHeads. Actually, we've done probably a lot more than that, Chris of the Northwest.
We probably have. However, 253 is my area code, so you know that's kind of special to me.
The very special Randomize LI.
Randomize LI.
In other words, episode 51. All right, well, episode 51 of Randomize.
Randomize 51, exactly.
Right.
51, Daryl. We've done
51 randomized episodes. And, you know, I was looking at the agenda, at the show schedule for the next 5 weeks. We don't have a randomized show coming up for 6 more weeks. Wow. It's not even on the calendar right now.
So Randomize 52 means you could listen to one randomized show a week for
an
entire year.
But look, with 253, that's almost a year full of an episode every day for your work week.
250 days is considered an average work year. So
right.
Yeah, there you go. You got an episode a day while you're at work.
Right.
Take the weekends off. It's all yours. Go out and do some geocaching.
Well, and start over at episode 1, and we'll do it. You know, just you'll go over them. You'll learn all that stuff that we talked about with, you know, like batteries at the very start. You know, the glimpse episode. You know, all that stuff that we talked about way back when. Some of which has changed, but there's still a lot of good information in there.
Glimpse hasn't changed.
Glimpse has changed a little bit, but not much at all since then. And, you know, the battery episode, the very first one where we talked about the tech of batteries, that really hasn't changed that much. There's some new entries in there. And, right. You know, some of the stuff like fuel cell has kind of petered out. But, you know, still some great information.
Yeah, that's disappointing. I thought fuel cell was going to take off.
You know, and there's a lot of people who really still wanted to. But the fuel cell for a laptop, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. No, it doesn't make sense. Especially these days, it seems like power consumption has kind of been wrangled under control, and it's not quite as bad as it was 10 years ago when they were trying to do the fuel cells in the laptops that were probably at least 3 times as thick as what they're selling now.
Right. I mean, hard drives have gotten smaller and more efficient. Processors have gotten more efficient. Memory has. All the components have gotten smaller and more power efficient, that you can get more life out of, or more runtime. That's the word I want to say, out of the same battery technology.
Well, and they've had to. One of the things that I heard recently, and they were talking about the MacBook Pros that were just announced, and why those things have such a small battery, is there's regulations in various countries about the size of a lithium-ion battery that can be flown.
Yes.
So they're putting the maximum size into these laptops that's legal to fly with. And that's why these are that size. It's like, really? I had, I'm not surprised, but I just hadn't thought about that. And that's apparently the limitation on the iPad Pro as well. If you open up the iPad Pro, there's a huge...
Are you talking the 12-inch? The big
iPad Pro? Yeah.
There's also the 9.7-inch iPad Pro.
Right. Well, and even the 9-inch, I think, has the smaller one. Sherminator 18, by the way, wants to know if that's a 3D printer over here. And yes, it is. It is a 3D printer. So I've now joined the 3D printer crowd.
Yay.
Well, I wanted to kind of talk about something that happened during an event last Friday where my iPhone stopped updating location and actually moved me to Germany.
Oh, so how was your time in Germany?
It was very cold.
You just missed Oktoberfest.
Yeah, I was going to say, and there's no beer tent. But there were no Pokestops or anything like that either. So,
there are Pokestops in Germany.
Not where I was.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to do any, I couldn't find any caches. There were no caches there either. So, what's the point? But what had happened is this is during the whole period that much of the Midwest was having AT&T issues, and I'm on AT&T for the iPhone. I had been in the Geosphere app under iOS 10.1, which has issues. And it seems like more issues under 10.1 than it had under 10. I switched to the geocaching app, which has its own location issues right now. When I switched to the geocaching app, it locked my location in Germany, and none of the apps would update, not a power cycle or anything. So I was stuck in Germany. I could not get out. And I've had the similar troubles before where it locks location, not since I think like iOS 8, but I've talked to at least one other person through the problem before. And the way that you address it, and this is why we're telling the story, is if you happen to run into this problem, there's a fix for most of these type of issues in just going to the settings app on the phone, hit the general, and then reset. And then under reset, you'll see the reset network settings. That clears out all of the carrier information. This cache is not like your SIM or anything because that doesn't get cleared out. But it clears out all of the carrier information, clears out all of your Wi-Fi settings, and a bunch of the other radio stuff. So when you do that, it does fix a lot of those problems. So that's a good one to check. And if you're having communication issues, definitely check that out as well, because I've had several times where like I wasn't passing data under LTE or wasn't connecting to data and it was just phone. If you hit that, it will fix the problem.
Okay, there you go. Now I've done that a time or two. GPS didn't put me somewhere else. It just couldn't get a lock.
Shermanator 18 wanted to know if this was an AT&T issue, and no, the issue that I was having with the network that day was AT&T. It was not an AT&T exclusive issue. I think the person who had the problem last time was on Verizon. Okay. So, this is just garbage that gets collected in those caches and doesn't get flushed when you do a reboot. Shermanator 18 also wanted to know if this was an Oregon 700 issue, and it was not. The 700 was powered down. But yes, it does sound a lot like the Oregon 700 issue. Well, you want to go to the email from Team Mavaju?
I will. Team Mavaju sent an email, and they said, today I finished entering the last of the 170 virtual caches of lighthouses known on the Australian coast and islands into Geocaching Australia listing service. The sources of the information were Wikipedia and lighthouses.org.au. Lots of things were learned, they say, like the way the patterns get written. FL3W15S. I'm thinking that's a flash, 3 flashes to the west for 15 seconds. Nope, Daryl's struggling to do something, but that's okay.
Sorry, no, I'm just trying to chat at the same time, which,
gotcha.
Shiny objects.
Okay. So he learned about the patterns. Yes, each lighthouse has its own pattern of lights, so that of light, so you know which one you're looking at. The difference in build styles, that for some reason the whole building in pieces got moved from England to here, or from Melbourne to the north of NT. For some places, they had to put a railroad track in towards the beach 3 kilometers away to get the building materials up. Every cache has a link towards a page with more information about it, and gorge yourself on the history of them. So I'm sure we'll put the show notes, or the links in the show notes, for the listings and for the map. Happy hunting to all the Bruces and Sheilas here.
Yeah, definitely. I want to put that stuff in there.
I didn't say that right, did I? Because, no. It's not Bruces and Sheilas. Even though that's how it's spelled, you have to say it with an Australian accent. And I am not going to offend anybody by trying to say it with an Australian accent.
Yeah, that's definitely cool. I love the virtual cache thing, and wish geocaching.com would have them again. But I love that kind of info.
Geocaching.com.au has them.
Absolutely, and so does the open caching
network.
Yeah. So
yeah, stuff. I love lighthouses. My father loves lighthouses, so I've learned a lot about lighthouses over the years. And we visited some here along the Pacific coast, and there are lighthouses up on a cliff, and you think, well, you just drive up to them on this side, but when they were built, there were no roads there. So what they ended up doing was moving the materials, the big blocks, of stone and what have you, by ship, and then using block and tackle to pull them up the cliff face and build the lighthouse there. I'm thinking, holy cow. That's a lot.
Well, one of the interesting bits of information I had learned from one of the museums is the freeways in this area were built using a narrow gauge railroad, because trucks at the time couldn't haul enough material. So they laid down a 2-foot gauge railroad down the center and used that to unload the supplies.
Interesting.
And then when they're done, they just pull it all back up.
Wow.
That's like a mining railroad. Right. So, very, very narrow, not a whole lot of load compared to what you're used to from a train, but perfect. It's like car size instead of being train size.
There you go. Yeah. It gives you the bigger, well, capacity overall, but not per load.
Well, yeah, it gives you loads because of the number of cars, but it's the heavier loads and one train of a whole bunch of cars instead of, tiny little like Model Ts probably at the time. We'll move on to L&N Railroad. I almost called them Railroad or Radio Railroad. Sorry about that. There is one big feature that makes the GPS Map 64 very attractive for someone who travels. It can hold almost unlimited caches. I think there is a limit, so you can't store every geocache in the world at one time. The device comes preloaded with 250,000 caches, which is more than I've ever had in GSAC. In the past, when I took long trips, it took a lot of planning to have all of the caches along my route and my destination, and sometimes I had to make compromises. I would take the Colorado 300, which is 2,000, and the Oregon 550, which is 5,000 caches. With a lot of work in GSAC, I could generally get most of what I wanted for a long trip. When I saw the GPS Map 64 ST allowed essentially unlimited cache storage, I immediately ordered one. Now I don't have to fool with trying to craft the perfect GPX file to load my GPS while playing with map editing. I can load everything I have saved in GSAC, and if I end up taking an unexpected side trip, I'm covered because I travel, get pocket queries for wherever I need to go. I recently got back from a trip where I added some new states, and the GPS Map 64 ST operated perfectly. I like buttons instead of touchscreen or the quick click wheel on my Colorado. My first GPSR was a Garmin 12, which I really enjoyed. The GPS Map 64 ST has everything I missed from the 12, plus it has all the modern features.
Nice. Yeah, 250,000 caches should be enough for anyone, even for quite a long road trip.
Yeah, well, and we did go back and forth a little bit on this too, but the way that does the extra caches is through the GGZ file. So you have to prep that through something like GSAC. You can't just download your pocket queries and shove them on there and have 25 pocket queries and have it recognize all those caches. So there is a little catch to it, but all of the modern Garmin units, I shouldn't say all, because I was having problems, and this is another thing that we complained about in this email thread, is how difficult it's become to get Garmin information. The specs were not available on like any of the units to say which formats were supported and what the cache limit is. He actually, I think, emailed Garmin to find out what the limits were on these units that he had, because I had remembered a firmware update for the later Oregons that increased its cache limit, but apparently the 5,000 was the increased limit. or the limit.
Okay.
But in any case, I believe the 30X, the eTrex 30X, probably even the 20X, and the Oregon 600 and 700 series, those all support the GZZ. And I don't remember, Chris, do you? We did a show, one of the randomized shows. We did a bunch of info on those GGZ files, but wasn't it the Oregon that started the G, or was the first with the GZZ?
I want to say it was like the 600, like the one I have over here, but I've never used a GGZ file.
Yeah.
Isn't the processing a little slower? I mean, literally it reads from within the zip.
It is. Yeah. And that's one of the issues, is that the GGZ file is essentially a zip file of multiple GPX files, specially crafted.
Right.
But it is a little bit slower. Meanwhile, Team Avaju says, stop buying GPS receivers, which can talk directly with your phone.
Pretty much all of them, right?
Yeah. Well, and if it depends on what we're considering actually talking with the phone. If we're considering, sending a cache to the phone rather than, using the phone as just the conduit, then that's none of them.
That's a good point. Yeah, the phone should be more of a conduit than, being able to talk back and forth, being able to log on the phone. But anyway, you know what? That's not what this show's about.
Well, the show's about a lot of little things.
Well, that's a lot of little things. Team Pugach sent an email that meshes perfectly in with what we're just talking about. Excuse me. He said, I really enjoyed the latest show and wanted to chime in. I started on the Magellan Explorers GC and loved it. I preferred the interface to the Garmin's. The only problem I had was it worked with an Apple computer about 20% of the time, and that was very annoying, especially as an Apple user going back 31 years.
Okay, quick interjection here. I do remember a lot of problems with the Explorers GC with connecting that were actually fixed in a later firmware version. But there was a point where even on my XPS, which is a Windows 7 machine, it would take sometimes 30 or 40 attempts to get it to actually mount.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. So I don't think it was an Apple thing. I think it was just the firmware was just buggy on a release or two for the mounting. But the issue that you do have with the Apple versus the Windows was Windows had the software. I can't remember what it was called, but they had the Magellan software that would actually load all of the images and everything. It did the API. So you could just log in, download your Pocket Query, throw all the images in there, and it did all that management for you. And on Mac OS, the only thing you could do was drag and drop your GPX files.
There you go. And that was using the official connection kit, right? There was a special kit for it?
Correct.
Okay. So he goes on to say, then I got an iPhone 4S and switched to smartphone only. Then the 5S, then the 6. Now I'm back to the GPSR, and I use the Garmin eTrex 20X. It was cheap, and I didn't want to spend the extra money for the compass, barometer, altimeter, and Bluetooth sharing between other users. Sometimes I wish I did because of the compass. In all honesty, the 20X is orange, and the 30X is gray, and I wanted to be able to find it when I drop it in the woods. There's something to that.
There is, but this is also why you get
the. Would also help you.
Oh, I was gonna say they also have those floaters, like the orange floaters. Just attach that to it.
There you go.
That way, if when you drop it in the water, it floats.
Yeah, and you don't see the glowing screen sinking down to the bottom.
Exactly.
Oh, that's got to be frustrating. He goes on. Anyway, I love my eTrex 20X. It is so much easier to load up from the laptop, and it took me a while to get used to the interface. After 4 months, I'm a pro at it. Installing the OpenStreetMaps was the best thing, in capital letters, the best thing I ever did. And with the latest updates for the units that Basecamp pushed onto it last weekend, I know I have the compass and map screen at the same time, and it's the compass on the map screen at the same time, and it's a huge improvement. The only thing I missed about caching with a phone is finding out what the trackables missions are before I take them. But my wife still has a smartphone. I converted her from the geocachinger app to Cachly, and she does the logging in the field. I got my eTrex 20X for $146 on Amazon and then sold my iPhone 6. So I got it free with store credit, as well as Eneloop batteries, Eneloop charger, and the Garmin carabiner clip and bicycle mount. A good trade, if you ask me. I never would let Johnny, now six, hold a smartphone in the woods. I let him control the GPSR now and hoping to add walkie-talkies to our geocaching bags. I'd love for you to do a show or at least cover the topic on a randomized show. He says, mainly, I want to know what walkie-talkies to consider buying. I'm looking at 2 handsets for under $100 so that we can go out as a family and get separated. We can still chat.
Now, we don't have a whole lot of good information about which ones to buy, but very quickly, there's 2 basic types of radios right now. There's the FRS, which is the Family Radio Service, and the GMRS, which usually has the FRS radios involved. The difference is the FRS radio is lower power and unlicensed completely. So 2 watts, or 2 miles rather, is what you can expect out of the FRS in perfect conditions. My experience with FRS is I've never gotten more than about half a mile, and that's in very, very good conditions. Usually it's about quarter of a mile at most.
Okay. I've used them, when we're not that far away, caravanning in vehicles or with kids at an amusement park. And, at the amusement park, there's just so much chatter.
Yeah, and this is one of the problems is you only have about 22 channels available. And then they have the security codes, which are absolutely absurd. Because what happens with those security codes is they're not security codes. It's just a little bit of extra information that when you have that code on that channel, it will open up the other receivers who have that code. If you just listen in on that channel, you can hear all the chatter. And it still talks over everyone else. So if you're talking while someone else is talking at the amusement park on that channel, right, when you don't have, with someone who doesn't have a security code or has a different security code, everyone's stepping on everyone else. So it's great in like the woods and stuff, not so good at an amusement park or fair or event.
Right. But it's still good if you get a pair of these walkie-talkies from the same manufacturer. They're going to talk together the best.
Yeah. Well, and that's what he's looking for is the if you stick with the same manufacturer, usually there's not going to be a problem. However, you do have to have the compatible frequencies. If you have an FRS radio and a GMRS and you start talking of the GMRS service, then you're not going to get anything.
Right.
But GMRS is longer range, higher power. However, to operate that at more than, I want to say it was 2 watts, then you need to have a license to operate those.
Right.
So you would need to go and get the license to get the full like 5 miles that you can get with GMRS. Actually, most of them now are advertising even longer than that. But you do need to have the license to get the best range through the highest power. And the GMRS, in my experience, does drain the battery faster.
Well, of course it does. It's greater power.
Yeah.
But something to consider is each person talking on the radio has to have a license. So you can't get a license and just then let your son, I'm going to use son. I'm going to use Team Pugash here as their example and let Johnny go talk on the radio. That doesn't work that way.
Exactly.
So Johnny has to go get his license as well. Shermanator 18 says, how much does a license cost? I don't know. You're basically getting a ham radio license.
If you have the ham radio license, I believe that qualifies you for GMRS. Right. but there was a separate license. I know they changed the licensing. I haven't had a chance to look up the cost on those licenses or what you have to do, but it was basically just, fill out this form, mail it in with a check for, at the time, $80, and you had a 3-year license. I've been told that that is not the case anymore.
The total cost of a GMRS license rose again from 85 to 90. That's what Google says.
There we go.
The FCC.
But I think that's for 3 years.
Well, I need to read this article for just a moment.
Okay. Well, you do that, and I'll look through.
The title of the article says FCC eliminates GMRS regulatory fee.
Oh, well, interesting. Go ahead and put that in the show notes as well. But while you're reading that, I'm just going to run through some of the radios I found in Amazon. And I just did a quick look based on the ratings there and what I know about some of these manufacturers. The one that they have as a bestseller at Amazon is the Motorola MH230R, which is a pair of GMRS FRS radios for Amazon price of $46, which is pretty reasonable for a pair, certainly under that $100. It's a decent cheap pair. If you want to go even less, Uniden, which is nowhere near the quality of the Motorola's in my experience, but still usable. And again, it's the FRS and GMRS. They have the GMR 1635 2-pack for $25. So for that, you get them, throw them in the cash bag. If you lose them, you're only out $12.50 a piece. Midland, which is actually much better from what I'm told than even the Motorola's, but I've never had my hands on one. They have a pair of the GXT 1000 VP4s, which advertise a 36-mile range in 50 channels, which I'm not sure how they're doing that. I don't really know, but it's a $60 pair. But the ones that I kind of like the best on my quick search over at Amazon in that under $100 range are the MS 350Rs from Motorola. And those are very much like that first set. It's, the full functionality of the FRS GMRS. They tout a 35-mile range, but the thing that makes these most interesting to geocachers is that they're waterproof. So for $65, you can get a pair of these waterproof walkie-talkies for the family to use when they're out and about.
So briefly going through this article, I don't know. How's that?
Fine. Then let's not put it in the show notes.
I can put the link in the show notes, and you can go read it for yourself. It sounds like they were collecting a $5 fee a year for 5 years, and it was actually costing more to process that paperwork than they were getting, so they decided to drop the fee. I get the impression there is still a fee to get your original license, but then once you're licensed, you're good for a while.
Interesting.
So there you have it. You want me to go on to the next topic?
Yeah, let's move on to Rock Chalk's email.
Well, there you go. Rock Chalk sent an email. He says, Premium Rock Chalk, by the way, is the public relations director at geocaching.com. He writes, premium members now can now easily edit, share, and organize lists of geocaches. We enhanced this feature to make planning your geocaching adventures easier. With My List, you can sort geocache list by list name, number of caches, list status, and last modified. Toggle list notifications on and off. Set list as public, private, or shareable. My List is now in beta, meaning it's still a work in progress, but you can try it out. Coming soon, this is an exciting part, create new list or add geocaches to existing lists from the map and geocache listings. So I played with the new list feature. If you go to your geocaching.com profile, and you have to be a premium member, You can look at, I believe you still go to bookmark lists. And once you get there, they said, hey, there's a new page. You can click on that. If you go to the new page, there's no way to create a list right now.
Well, we do have a link in the show notes that will take you right to that page. But it is definitely a work in progress. The way that I see this is mostly that you can do, or that they're doing the updated interface and getting rid of more of that legacy code.
Right.
But you can now do some basic edits like make it public, do the sharing, get the share links, all that kind of stuff right from that list. And more importantly, when you click through those lists, you can now do this sorting on like the distance.
Right. But if you go to your geocaching or app, you can add a list there. Or if you go to the search page, you could check mark individual caches or an entire search result and add the first 1,000 geocaches to a new list that you create there.
But I think this is probably the first step in getting to a replacement for pocket queries.
I agree. We talked
but
about
you
this
can
last
do
week on caching in the Northwest, by the way.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing something about that there. But the cool thing is from that list, you can right now click and create the pocket query. So it's you don't have to go into the bookmark list to create the pocket query.
Right. But what it's doing is, in my opinion, this isn't from RockChalk or from geocaching.com. It's taking that processing and pushing it out to your device. So you, instead of geocaching.com servers doing all the work to prepare the, I've forgotten the term, pocket queries. Thank you. It's pushing that processing to your device, to your mobile device or to your computer to put those, to aggregate those lists of geocaches together.
Well, I think the actual listing is done there, but what it's doing is moving the information gathering to your device.
Mm-hmm.
So it's providing the list of the caches, and then your device goes and queries the servers to get the information about that cache. So the thing that I like about that more than anything else is it doesn't mean your information is stale. You're not loading up that pocket query from like 3 days ago with old cache information.
Because it happens to be the same name. Oh, I didn't realize which one that was. So I've done that. So I have to find a cache that has now been archived.
Yep. I don't think there's going to be a fix aside from, doing the live updates in the field, because I've actually had that happen while I'm out. I'll like load up the caches, go for, an hour of caching, and then find out it was archived. And that's only if the person, the cache hider has logged that they archived it. We've gone for some only to find they were archived 2 or 3 days later when they actually posted their archive note.
Right.
Which I will put out a plea. Anyone who wants to archive a cache, if it's gone missing, make sure you put those notes on there that it looks like it's missing and you'll check, but archive it and then pull the cache. Don't pull the cache container and then archive it.
Exactly.
Sherminator 18 is saying this happens to her all the time on her GPS. Yeah, GPSs don't update.
Exactly.
You have to manually do the update. But we mentioned at the very beginning of the show that we did that episode way back when, 5 years ago almost, on battery tech. And there was an interesting article from Engadget about a month ago on some of the new battery technologies that are coming. I don't think any of these are really that likely to hit, but they're all interesting, and eventually we might see bits and pieces of these. So the first one that they had was actually what they call the leafy green battery.
This is amazing.
Yeah. So they're taking oak leaves at the University of Maryland and heating them up to 1,000 degrees Celsius to destroy
8 billion degrees Fahrenheit.
It's insane temperatures. But they're destroying the existing carbon structures and then introducing electrolytes to the leaf's pores for absorption. And it's basically the plant becomes, the leaf becomes a battery. How bizarre is that?
What made them think of that?
I can't imagine.
Let's see.
What
We need
came
something
up?
to absorb this electrolyte material. Let's use a leaf.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's great, but no, I think it's a great idea. It's something that's, readily available, but I don't know.
Well, and at 1,000 degrees, I don't see that as being, you're going to have people going and harvesting and collecting these leaves, and then you have to put them through this process to create it. So, maybe there's something there. I don't want to totally discount that, but I don't see this as being a technology that's likely to hit production. The interesting one of the batch to me was this graphene battery that charges in an instant, is what they're calling it.
Rapid charging abilities.
Yeah. So this is another one of those graphene things. And we've heard people using graphene fibers in existing lithium ion batteries and lithium polymer batteries to help stabilize them and to reduce the decay. It also helps make them charge faster. So this is a graphene based battery rather than just another battery with graphene. So it's saying in this summary of the technology that they're using the graphene to replace lithium in the battery's supercapacitor.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, it sounds like this is more of a capacitor than it is a battery, but capacitors are used for, short-term power storage because they work very well and they can charge very, very quickly.
Right. But, you turn off the circuit and all the power's gone. So, there's a difference between a capacitor and a battery. But for the most part, they both hold electricity until it's needed at a later date.
Right. Well, and what they've done in some of the cars and whatnot, and I don't know that any of the cars have actually hit the road, but the cars where they were trying to do the rapid charging, they would have these capacitors. Mm-hmm. And the capacitors would be for the rapid charging. You charge those up, and then they slowly charge the battery, right, or they actually directly drive whatever was needed. But they'd also use it for the dynamic braking, which is where on an electric vehicle, the brakes will generate power instead of just, exhausting that as heat. It generates the power that can then go and charge your battery again. So by having that capacitor, it allows more rapid discharge and charging. So it acts as a buffer to the battery. Exactly. So this is interesting because it's sounding like it's kind of able to do the longer term storage that capacitors have not been able to do, mm-hmm, and have all of the nice quick charge and discharge factors. This one just kind of seems bizarre.
It's perfect for after Halloween.
Yeah.
The sugar battery?
Yes. Yeah. Sweet and cheap, a battery fueled by sugar. That's their title for this one. And it's Virginia Tech, which doesn't surprise me because it seems like they're doing a lot of cool, weird things with battery tech out there. But they have a sugar-based battery that lasts longer than any other sugar-based prototype. So, mm-hmm, in other words, other people have been trying this.
Right. Well, and their main point is it's using maltodextrin. It's a polysaccharide, as you know.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yes, as one knows. From the partial hydrolysis of starch. And then it's turned and used as a fuel. It's a fuel in our body. Why can't it be a fuel in our GPS?
Well, here's what I want to know that they don't really talk about here. I think this is not a rechargeable battery. I'm thinking this is a disposable battery.
It might be.
Because it sounds like that's a chemical reaction that's not going to be reversible by charging. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
but that to me makes this even more interesting because if we can start using this instead of our alkaline and lithium batteries,
sounds like a fuel cell to me because it says that's isolated from the natural sugar, that maltodextrin, and then used as fuel when combined with air, which is what fuel cells did. the battery releases the electrons from the sugar to generate.
Well, that's also what some of those hearing aid batteries do. The what is it? It's zinc oxide, I think, batteries.
Okay.
It's the same type of thing. So there's the batteries, and then there's the fuel cell, and I don't know where that border is. Yeah, and I think it's something with a way, if it's a chemical reaction that happens on its own, then it's a battery. I think if it needs, something to process it, then it's a fuel cell. Okay. I could be wrong. We'd have to go and look into it.
But sugar is cheap and abundant, and it has the chance to be biodegradable as well.
Yeah. So I like this one a lot. Yeah, it's probably going to be, if it's the way that I'm envisioning, cheap AA batteries that you can throw away without concern.
Right.
And we all like that, right?
Yeah.
Next one on the list is the gold-based battery. No, this is going to be expensive, but it doesn't die. That's what they claim.
Meaning it doesn't stop recharging.
Right.
It's not
it that doesn't have the life,
infinite power. Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't have a limited number of recharges.
Right. So this was an accidental discovery by University of California, Irvine researchers that does do essentially an unlimited number of charges. Now they in this article say thousands of times, so I'm not thinking they know for sure that it's going to be unlimited, and I'm guessing, like everything else, it does have a finite number of recharges, but it's probably significant enough that you're never going to experience it with any normal use.
Yep.
But it's protected electrode nanowires made from thin cores of gold surrounded by layers of magnesium. I can't say it. Chris, help me out.
Manganese dioxide.
Thank you. And a plexiglass-like electrolyte gel.
And, they said they've, recharged them thousands of times without showing any signs of wear. But if you're pulling electrons out of one element or compound to push them out to a battery, you're eventually going to run out of electrons.
Yeah, there's the entropy that's going to be in play there, if I remember correctly.
But I mean, recharging them gets so I don't know. It's an interesting concept. Being based in gold, I don't think it's going to be cheap.
No, but if it's as durable as they're thinking it will be, we'll have to see. Again, this could be one of those ones that has. This was developed trying to develop better lithium-ion tech. So, who knows what's going to come of it long term. Right. Next one is a self-destructing battery. It dissolves in water.
Don't we all have self-destructing batteries?
I was going to say that just seems like the way all of the batteries are. But the battery is designed to self-destruct when triggered by light, heat, or liquid. So I don't think this is one that I necessarily would want, but they're talking about it being suited for military applications.
Right.
So I'm thinking this might be good for like researchers, have some kind of balloon or whatnot with your instruments. And when it, crashes, the battery is destroyed. So you don't have to worry about the toxic elements of the battery.
Exactly. And that's the idea. It's, light, heat, or liquid. You definitely don't want to take it with you geocaching.
No, that would probably be bad.
But the idea is, the battery itself will self-destruct or decompose when exposed to light, heat, or liquid. So it's not going to be a long-term landfill issue.
Yeah, well, and it's not going to be the toxicity that we're used to with most of the other batteries.
Mm-hmm.
Then the last one is the edible saltwater battery, talking about something that's not going to have the toxicity. I think we found our winner.
It's great for a dessert if you're just looking for something light. No, I would pair it with a Chardonnay.
Yeah, I'm thinking this would be good for your turkey to let it soak in the brine solution, and there you go.
Oh, that's funny. There's probably no reason to eat a battery, but you could chow down on parts of this if you really felt compelled. An attempt to demonstrate how natural and eco-friendly this company's new battery really is. Jay Whittaker at I didn't look at this ahead of time. Aquion
Aquion is how I would pronounce that.
Aquion Energy has eaten parts of the saltwater-based battery and lived to tell the tale. So, the battery's components are derived from such materials as dirt, carbon, and salt water, acting as an electrolyte solution. It's not a delicious meal, but it definitely wouldn't hurt you to eat the individual pieces.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about this is, unlike the other ones, this is a large scale battery. This is, for like battery backups. So, the photo is like a pallet, haul it in with a forklift. But I love this concept. The batteries that we have right now are very deadly for battery backups, and what do they call it? The rollover power. If you have the generator, you'll usually have a room full of batteries that act as a buffer. So it takes, a couple of minutes for your generator to spin up. You have to have enough power in these batteries to do that. And you have to maintain and replace these batteries that they're using right now. The place that
be lead acid batteries.
Yeah, almost always are lead acid, big car batteries, that kind of thing. But the place that one of my buddies worked, they just kind of neglected to maintain their batteries for about 7 or 8 years. And all of a sudden they had to evacuate the building because there was a slime coming from under the door of acid that was highly toxic.
Love it.
So yeah, just a friendly reminder, make sure to maintain your lead acid batteries, I guess.
New horror movie. It came from the battery room.
But Chris, neither one of us seem to be talking all that well anymore. So I'm thinking we need to wrap up this one and jump over to
the tequila beforehand.
No, that would probably explain it. I don't know what my excuse is.
Oh no, I don't have tequila.
Too long a day, probably.
That's the problem.
Yeah, there you go. But we're going to have a Patreon episode after this where we'll subject all of those people who actually give us some money to more of our insanity, including a new Voltaic solar pack that's on Kickstarter, and a little bit about the defense contracts for GPS. And of course, we're going to have to talk about 3D printers since, I finally got to use one.
Yay for you. But guys, we thank you for your reviews on iTunes for the GeoGearHeads. We appreciate that. And for your posts on social media that you like this show so that your friends can hear. And don't forget to send us email and feedback of shows that you've listened to that maybe we got something wrong. It does happen. Or let us know your real world experiences, even if I can't say it well. Thanks.
Yeah, we have a lot of those shows that are good reference materials, and we've had people posting on Facebook and Twitter. Hey, check out this show. It's got a bunch of great links, like the last one did, and of course, lots of great information in some of those shows with tips, tricks, and just explanations. And we've got a ton more shows coming. And I mentioned we have the next 5 weeks are already published. The next show is going to be getting good chords, and we're going to be talking again about how to get the best chords, but also about the coordinate systems themselves, because you kind of understand that in order to figure out some of the chord averaging and whatnot. Then on the 17th, we have Jennifer of Team AJK coming on to talk about ciphers. That should be a good one for everyone to learn how to actually process those ciphers and figure out what you need to do as well. Then for Thanksgiving, we have a Canadian takeover. Chris, I don't know why we agreed to this.
I didn't. It was all you.
Yeah, this is true. It was all my fault.
I've learned the lesson. But I'm just saying, Daryl, wow. Most of our shows are really good.
Well, and I'm sure it will be a lot of fun listening to DeBear and Land Monkey go at it for an hour. And I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'll be there. I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to sit in the sidelines and, engineer the show and let them take over, and we'll see where it goes from there.
You know what? If I would trust my podcast to anybody, it would be those two.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them that you wouldn't trust it to. But on December 1st, we're going to be talking about the trackable partnerships with a couple of the ladies from the Groundspeak trackables department. I can't remember what they call it anymore.
Merchandising?
No. They actually had a different name. It's like partnerships and promos, I think. Okay. But I'll find that out and we'll let you know next week. But I've got it in the notes, which I was just doing about an hour before the show. So that's only 2 hours ago. My brain is fried.
Well, Daryl, you know what you should do? You should check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the GeoGearHeads, including show notes from this and all our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing GeoGearHeads at cachemaniacs.com or through the many channels of social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniac shows. GeoGearHeads is produced by Chris Umpenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show's copyright 2016 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cachemaniacs.